All right, episode 220. That's 220 for those who need to hear it all the way.
And we're just going live in other places.
That's
for the
right.
First time.
We are live on the TikToks and the Instagram, but we're talking about the future of commissions today. The Sitzer Burnett outcome explained for realtors. We're going to get started right now. All right, episode 220. Welcome back. Of course, you know what we're breaking down today. We have to be breaking down the settlement, right, of what NAR just did last Friday. And you are listening to the only real estate podcast worth listening to. If you don't know who I am, my name is Nick Good. We've got Brian Force over here, Matt Kelderman.
That is me.
And today, just like some of our previous shows, like some of the previous podcasts that we've done in the past, because that's what previous means, is that some of the best ranking ones has been the breakdown about kind of the lawsuit commissions going on. And then on Friday, we get the breaking news that NAR just decides to settle. Yeah. And that was, the settlement wasn't surprising. Actually, 91% of all lawsuits actually settle in the United States. So, obviously it was going to be a high probability, but listening to or reading what the potential settlement outcome is was more shocking, right?
I was curious about that. Jesse's automatically. I was like, "Is that a real thing?"
I was more
sense.
afraid of the jail time I was going to do, according to my TikTok comments, because apparently people think real estate agents are going to spend time in the clink over this.
That's right. So you do see I was right. 90%. I was 1% off of that. 90%.
No, it says more than, so you're right.
Yeah. So 91% of lawsuits actually settle. And so we're going to break down kind of the settlement, what we do know, and just kind of our thought process behind it. And ultimately, we have a petition for everyone to sign.
Yes, we should have printed this up.
We should have.
But we're dead serious about this too, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll put it
this isn't a show bit.
Yeah, it's kind of a show bit, but like we want to see, I want this to grow legs, honestly. We were joking around, but like, what if we just applied to run for NAR CEO position as the triplets over here and Jesse?
Yes.
The quad.
Yeah, the quads.
What's a tripod? But
Foursome.
What's
a table?
a chair, a table, a piece of furniture.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's fair.
So, but look, before we break that down today, tag some people on this, share this out. Jared Ty was practicing not dropping the soap, so thank you, Jared, for that. Yeah, thank you. But we got to thank our sponsors of today's show, right? So, I think loan officers and mortgage professionals are going to be the new real estate professionals.
They're going to have to answer some questions and figure out some solutions under this new scenario.
Yeah, I heard they're going to start showing houses.
Yes.
So, and Mortgage Mike, I don't know if he'll go show a house for you, but he'll give you that Mortgage Mike stamp of approval. And he's just giving loans out left and right now.
You want to know what Mortgage Mike's going to do that the real estate attorney's not going to do that you hired to handle a real estate transaction? Mortgage Mike's going to answer the phone at 7:00 at night and actually respond to you.
That's true.
I don't want to toss Mike under the bus for being available all the time, but one of the things I love about working with him the best is I do not have to wait for responses when I need to get stuff done.
Unless he's playing Call of Duty.
That's fine, but I know what time of day that happens because I'm on the text message thread. So
exactly.
You just ask him there.
Yeah, you should. But Mortgage Mike, go to mmgloans.com and just ask him to get that big old Mortgage Mike stamp of approval. And then after that, you got to go to Theron Smith over at Armadillo Home Warranty, armadillo.1/TOR, TORE. And he's giving that hard shell protection on all those houses right now. And then, of course, we've got Dana Wynn at Homeward DFW, the best Dallas-Fort Worth residential property management company out there. Wow.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's probably the best spot I've ever done.
That's probably she would have done it because she's exhausted all the time.
Exactly. I was feeling her energy at lunch today.
My body isn't ready for prison.
So, and then who do we have after that? We've got Tor.
Tor Studios.
No, we got Tor, bro. We got Tor.
I don't know who you're arguing with.
Tor Studios.
With himself. He's like, who do we have? No, it's Tor.
Yeah.
Shut up, Nick.
So we got Tor. We got Tor Studios. Go to torstudios.com and just be on the lookout. We are actually launching a product. That is something that we've said that if we're ever going to monetize the show, it's going to be shit that actually works.
Yeah.
And Tor Webinars is about to be launched, and we're going to be launching a webinar here shortly. You'll see it about actually breaking down this lawsuit.
Yeah.
And then honestly, how you should be running webinars in your business so you can set yourself out from everyone else, because everyone's running scared right now.
If you pay attention today, you might get some free game on whether both of those are valuable for you or not.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
might just give the whole webinar away today.
Possibly so. But, and this is something, I've seen on all the socials, right? Brian hasn't seen it because he doesn't really go on there.
I watch reels. Mostly it's like boxing and snowboarding.
God, that's boring.
His algorithm's dialed in.
Yeah.
I will say though, because you guys know I'm old Facebook guy.
Yeah.
I've got pulled over to TikTok in this thing because I popped a video out there that got a little bit of attention, and it is a different universe on TikTok.
Is it really?
Oh
It is,
my
yeah.
good gracious!
The TikTok world is mean.
It's
Is
mean.
it?
It's so mean. Like
It's mean. It's
like,
uneducated. It's
I will say
happy for
this.
failure.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is TikTok, and then I'm not on much, but I will say Jesse's a Reddit guy because he gets his European soccer information there. My one commentary about social, I guess, is Reddit is social media, is that is the brightest and darkest place in the world. Because if you want really unbiased information or good recipes or some other stuff, like people will give you really great information about stuff on Reddit. And if you click one wrong button, it'll change your whole day.
Yes,
That's
that's
real
fast.
fast.
That's a fact.
That's real.
You will get some
It's
also great
crazy.
information.
What do you
Yeah.
mean one wrong button?
I'm just
you
you misunderstand a link. And it's
Yeah. Here's what I will say is that, and I've seen people in all the real estate Facebook groups, which you should go join ours, the only real estate podcast worth listening to and the only real estate group worth being a part of. But I've seen them being like, why are we talking about this? We're just the consumers. They're like, we're sounding uneducated. We're talking like we don't know what we're talking about, which some of you guys are.
we're gonna break that down.
Yeah, we're definitely going to break that down. But I have had more non-real estate agents hit me up and ask me about this and how it will affect our business,
Yeah.
or if this is even true. And so, like, this isn't something that just real estate agents are talking about, by the way. This is something that our consumers are. Is that, what was that, Brian?
100%. Oh no,
Okay.
this is like
Okay.
like 100. Yeah, this is what consumers and real estate agents are, and that's kind of where I wanted to start. Is like, let's take the time. We were gonna commit to taking the time to establish a baseline for the facts.
Yeah.
Right. What exactly changed? Let's get the social media comment stuff and all the interpretations out of it. Right. So we can pull this up. I want to let's start a foundation of the exact rule changes.
Sure. Jesse,
Right.
do you have that as well? Can you pull that up on the screen?
Pull it on the big screen. Yeah. So
Yes.
let's just literally
I'm
spend 2 minutes
Yeah.
of education of here's exactly what is happening.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is what we know right now, right? So I was on a webinar with some attorneys, and they're like, "Look, this is very fluid right now. We're using this as what we know currently."
Yeah.
And what on this webinar, I saw a lot of agents commenting like, "This won't be allowed in my MLS. This won't be this. This won't be that." I'm like, guys, things are changing. You're trying to compare something that's now in the past to something that's going to be the new, whatever the new normal is going to be.
Yep.
So we kind of have to blend some of that together. And we need to understand that basically a lot of stuff's going to change that we don't like.
Yep.
And it's going to be like you standing out in front of a moving bus and trying to stop it. It's not going to go very well for you.
No.
Right. And so what we need to see right now is we'll break down everything. And I know Jesse's still pulling it up. We're going to break down everything that we do know. But I was talking to Beth Silverman yesterday, right? Friend of the show, been on multiple times, the investment expert, the pad split queen. And, I told her, I said, Beth, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Right.
You have built this niche market out. You can start charging people maybe even higher amount of money. And she's like, no, I don't think it's going to work that way for me. And she was,
what's her biggest concern? Because I'm curious how this is affecting like the market that she works in.
So in her mind, first and foremost, in her mind, she's a little concerned about how she can, build her commissions in or her fee. On the listing side, her state broker there said everybody, if she's going to show that property that she has listed, every buyer that she shows has to be under a buyer's representation agreement to show the property.
I could see where if you're the listing agent and you get a lot of phone call shows that this could be an administrative nightmare, right? Because you do have to get those buyer reps in place with everybody. Is that the type of one-off? That's not going to affect the agents who are just showing their tip because they're going to have one buyer's rep in place for their one buyer who they're showing those homes.
Right.
All right. So this is a good place. We were just
it's the first
sidebarring. So Jesse can pull this up. So let's focus on this. So this is number one. Okay. So here's what has changed. Number one, buyer representation agreements will be required going forward. Agents working with buyers must sign a written buyer representation agreement with the buyer before the agent can show a home listed on the MLS. So that is now a regulation.
You know what I like about this, though? I used to teach buyer classes, and this document was pretty useless, honestly. The buyer representation agreement was a one-party document, meaning it could be canceled with no matter what. It didn't have a lot of teeth in it, and it didn't have a lot of teeth in it because our brokers didn't allow it to have any teeth. Every time we tried to enforce this buyer rep agreement, the broker would just tell you, hey, just go find another client. Just go lead generate. Just go put your efforts towards something. Just let that one go and move on. So we were all trained from the top down that this agreement wasn't nearly as ironclad as the listing agreement. And I think that flips on its head a little bit right now because the buyer rep agreement is going to become like a really important document in making sure that people get paid.
Here, okay. So before we get to that number one spot, hold on, because I have some questions about this, right? So with this settlement that NAR has agreed to, and it still has to be ratified. Right now, yes. And if everything that we know to be fact or true on here would go in effect sometime mid-July is what they're talking about. And so what I have questions about on this, just like everyone else does, is if you're the listing agent, your fiduciary responsibility is to sell this house, correct? And if you show now an unrepresented buyer, they are choosing to be unrepresented. It says right here, before an agent can show home listed on the MLS, that there must be a buyer's representation agreement in place. Is that, we have a little asterisk right here that if you are the listing agent and that buyer's choosing to be unrepresented?
Yeah, that's a curious. So, okay. So this is, I want to read these off because I think this is actually relevant to that, that question. So kind of the sub point one here is agents must disclose the amount or rate of compensation they'll receive or how this amount will be determined. The amount of compensation must be set in the agreement, such as the percentage or dollar amount, and cannot be open-ended. For example, you can't just say it's going to be TBD based on the sales price or anything like that. It's got to be a percentage or a flat fee, and it's got to be disclosed up front. And then agents cannot receive compensation or brokerage services from any source more than the amount, and we're going to circle back to this one, more than the amount agreed to in the representation agreement. So let's just say if you agree to a certain percentage, but the listing agent offers you a higher percentage, you cannot collect the higher percentage. You can only collect what you agree to. The reason that I wanted to get those points out of the way is from a listing agent side, that's a very important distinction. So if I have an unrepresented buyer that is interested in my listing, not only do I have to figure out how to show them the property without signing a representation agreement with them, I have to actually negotiate the compensation I would receive up front before I even show them the house, which is actually pretty germane to the conversation I'm having with my actual clients, the sellers, to whom I have a fiduciary responsibility.
Correct. A fiduciary gets thrown in the middle of the lake.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting dynamic on that particular front. That's why I wanted to read those points out, because it's not just about signing a buyer rep. It's about agreeing to a compensation model with a buyer before you show them a house on your own listing is a very interesting situation.
So, and I believe what's going to happen is that there's going to be, before this gets ratified, there's going to be some changes to this, right? Because again, just really quick, we've already poked some holes into this. And there was, right before the show started, Michael Zobek, who is a client of mine, texted me. He's like, look, as a kind of non-agent thinking about, non-agent perspective on this, he's like, we do need agents. And does this affect home values? Right. Yeah. And or if you are in a market that sells itself, will we start to see more for sale by owners who will offer some type of some type of commission, right?
Yeah.
And we will say, I am under the opinion, and I'm going to put this here, and I want to pull this pen out in this grenade for a second, and I'm going to leave it here on this table.
Sweet.
Because if we start to see,
Wednesday, guys.
if we start to see for sale by owners that can do that, but then you start to see maybe flat fee listings or people just going on the MLS, like you could pay to go on the MLS and it would syndicate everywhere. Do we now, because you cannot publicly offer a commission on the MLS, right? That will be something I'm assuming that's going to get pulled up here in a minute. So number 2 of what we know, offers of a cooperative compensation cannot be made on the MLS. Right. And Jesse, if you scroll up a little bit, my phone's in the way. So it says agents cannot make offers of a cooperative compensation on the MLS. So all MLSs must eliminate all broker compensation fields on the MLS and prohibit the sharing of offers of cooperative compensation in any other MLS field as well. And so to me, all right, to go back to what my client Michael Zobek had put, is like, will we start to see more for sale by owners just say, all right, I can sell this myself. I don't need the listing agents.
Yeah, and like I'm going to attract buyers with agents by offering
a comp. But how are they going to know? Because you cannot go now.
The marketing of this is the hard part. McDonald's, Duracell, all these like companies that you see on the rings of sporting events, they spend half of their budget every year on marketing. Like people are vastly underestimating their ability to get their home in front of the right people.
Yeah.
And that's the part of this I don't necessarily understand. I had a gentleman comment earlier on social media somewhere just about the legal part of this. And this is the other part I want to unpack with you guys at some point is like, what culpability do sellers have when working with buyers and disclosure issues and now lawsuits potentially? Like bringing this all in house leaves people open to massive litigation too, doesn't it?
I mean, that aspect certainly feels like the Wild West. And I think we should definitely unpack that too, because that's a great point. I think to your point though, when we talk about, you can't put that on the MLS. I mean, to play devil's advocate, if I was a FSBO, I'd put it on Zillow and I would put that in the description.
Sure. So you can probably put it on Zillow because Zillow is not an MLS.
But also this is for agents. A seller could do whatever they want.
Well, not to go on the MLS. No.
Well, no, because they would have to listen to it. I'm saying, you're talking about for sale by owners.
Well, yes. So for sale by owners who typically, because most for sale by owners they didn't just go on Zillow. They would go on.
There you are.
I don't even know who is this guy.
The hate for real estate agents is insane.
That has to be insane. This guy commented in your feed has to be yours.
People hate us right now.
I don't understand.
This is what I'm talking about, bro. Look at it. It's hilarious. Yeah. This is what I've been dealing with for 4 days.
Yeah, this is interesting.
What up, Gunner?
Yeah, but
this is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's bananas.
So here's the grenade that I want to put on the table right now is that does the MLS become not as relevant and strong because again, NAR doesn't have the stronghold that they used to have, right? And so do we start to see more because you can offer compensation off market now?
Yeah.
So you can off market sellers can. So all right, number 2 it says sellers can offer concessions. So let's hold this grenade for a second. Sellers can offer concessions to buyers in a public comment field and an MLS listing if the concessions are not conditioned on paying the buyer's agent commission. Right?
Yeah.
Let's be real. It's gonna go to that.
Sure.
And then Jesse, if you keep scrolling up a little bit more, let's go to 3. Offers of cooperative compensation may be made off the MLS.
Right. Well, and so this is a great, I think, time to sort of address some of the comments and stuff, right? So Jared had said,
wait, what comment are you addressing here?
I'm going to just do the adult ones. So, Jared Ty just said, what it's getting at is it's not the seller's responsibility to negotiate, BAC and stuff. And I agree with that. And so, I think we're probably all in agreement in some way, but I've been very quiet about this last few days. My opinion on this is actually at the bones. This is not a bad thing. I'm in favor.
Agreed.
I'm in favor of free markets.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that this ruling has a lot of hybrid elements, some of free markets and some of regulated markets. So the idea that clear cooperation is going away, that's actually deregulation. And I think that's good. I think there's free markets. I think that the strong will survive. I think that new business models will emerge. And I think that people should be compensated in a way that's in line with the service that they provide. And no one should be forced to pay somebody that they don't think provided value. I think that we should be able to, or should have to demonstrate that. And that's fine. Also, but you're also in part of this is you're telling people they can't do something as well, meaning I can't advertise a BAC.
Yeah.
And now that's regulating the industry again in the opposite way. And so while we're saying that this is more transparent, we're also regulating what people can and can't do.
Yeah. And there's homeowners that understand. First off, we did this on the show when we were kind of breaking down this lawsuit and talking about commissions. And we talked about back in we could go back as far as 1992.
Yeah.
And it would show the average commission rate.
6.04 in 92, by the way.
6.04 in 92.
Yep.
But historically it's been like 5.75.
And I also don't want to be obtuse either, right? Like real estate was much, much more difficult in 1992 than it is now. Technology is absolutely made, because Brian's right. I don't think there's anybody at this table who's arguing the fact that like every real estate is amazing and nobody's ever screwed up, right? Absolutely. Real estate agents in 1992 didn't have the technology that we have now. Right. And I think that's really important in noting the fact that like that's where I think a lot of consumers feel duped
because technology should drive the price down in their opinion.
But
right?
It's not only just in their opinion, it's historically accurate for every other industry on earth.
Sure.
And that's why I think I understand the frustrations. Right. Like
well, again, and let me, and while I agree for the most part, the way that selling of a property, that hasn't changed very much. It still takes a human buyer and a human seller to agree on terms.
And that is very rarely, even though there's a million people with their anecdotal evidence in comment sections right now, that is rarely the situation for the masses. We could all sit here and tell 50 horror stories about closings we've had and things that have went wrong and ways that we've saved the deal, right? Like we can make videos for days endlessly about that. I don't think overall though, the people with the personal experience of having never like had a problem in a real estate transaction are going to buy that from us either, right? Like I'm also very sensitive to the fact that if you've sold 4 houses yourself in wherever America and it's never been an issue for you, then okay, you probably don't see a need for real estate agents. And we've never told you have to use us. There are tools in place like the MLS that come with using a real estate agent. What you don't get to do as a consumer is decide that you want all of the good parts of efficiency, but not pay the money for the efficiency. You can call NAR and the MLS like a monopoly if you want to. But the reality is the MLS is an efficiency that's been designed by a real estate community over time that's allowed you, the home consumer, to find homes faster. So to act like all of those mechanics going into play haven't added to how real estate grows, how real estate is more attainable for people than ever, right? Like you don't get to ignore that fact. Just say real estate agents suck and we'll just sell our houses ourselves.
Sure. And Jesse, if you can go back, we don't have to worry about this guy right now. So the comment that Tyson just had, the risk versus reward, I don't get a normal paycheck, so I take on more risk. So when I do get paid, I get more reward. And that's something that, again, when you go into the field of comments, and I know that you're going to, some of this, but, when we look at some of this of you're driving around, let's look at this from a buyer's agent perspective, right? You're driving around on a Saturday and you show 20 houses, right? You've now invested, how long does 20 houses take you to show? All day, right?
Oh, yeah.
We'll call that
12, 14 hours. If you're showing 20 houses and have any distance between them?
10 to 12. We'll call it 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
Right? 10 to 12 hours. You now have your time invested in that. And that's assuming they actually write an offer on those properties. Then you have the gas involved, plus your dues and everything else. So we're running a legitimate business. And now they decide, you know what, Matt, thank you for your time, but my wife, her cousin just got licensed, and we're going to use her instead.
happens all the time, though.
Correct.
Like, here's the thing is I've walked myself into these swamps, right?
Yes.
But I will also be an advocate for the consumer on this. Your bad business model is not the consumer's problem, right? Your profitability is not the consumer's problem. And we as real estate agents have to stop making that the conversation, because you're going to get torched. It's a terrible conversation. So I agree with you. But I saw agents commenting all the time, like, my broker takes this. These are the splits. Your business model is not the consumer's problem. They will find somebody else.
That's a great scenario.
Absolutely.
The point is, in that situation, you are taking the risk. You're taking the risk of driving around and showing people 20 houses without an enforceable buyer representation agreement.
That's not smart.
This is now a free market.
But even if you had a buyer's rep, let's be real. We've even said, was it Brandon Snyder up above? That's like, it's not that enforced.
No. And I'm going to, and then so I there's a couple of things I promise to do on this episode. I promise to be open-minded as possible and learn. I also promise to make sure that we as real estate agents understand the fucking stuff we need to hear.
Sure.
Buyer representations agreement will change. Our office actually changed their buyer representation agreement already. It's now 2 pages long and it's entirely enforceable. So what we're talking about using the same documents as were used in a completely regulated environment. Sure. That will change. I promise you, if you sign a retainer with your lawyer, he's charging you one way or another.
And so here's how this all plays. That's the part no one's thinking about, right? Right now, you're hearing sellers or homeowners who also, by the way, probably bought that house with a real estate agent, say that, Matt, you don't deserve a $30,000 payday.
Yeah.
And rarely does that actually happen. But they're also not thinking about, all right, when you want to go and buy a house, now agents, probably the smart, profitable agents, are going to hold some type of retainer fee up front for their time that will be invested. And they're going to have now what they determine as their comp plan, and they're going to negotiate with you up front.
We accidentally tripped and fell into this conversation during COVID, not knowing that this legislation was coming, but talking about how the market would eventually shift back. Because remember, during COVID, we had purple bricks. We had all of these crazy scenarios that we worried about coming and undercutting us with the seller, because the seller was the easy side of the transaction, right? Now it looks like buyers are the castaway orphans of this whole situation that are getting tossed into the abyss, that are going to have to figure their own thing out. So there's going to be a business that bubbles up around buyers, right? And it's going to be a business that has variable fees and variable services for all kinds of buyers. And you're going to get variable representation and variable good things happening to you. And that's fine. But we accidentally predicted this, knowing that eventually the buy side would be the side of this that was the one that was more profitable because they needed the most help.
Right. So let's go back to the grenade, right? That we just pulled that pin on.
Oh, it's still sitting there.
It's still sitting there. It's ticking. And what could happen is that the MLS and NAR, right? NAR has lost its luster. And look, we've probably been really hard on NAR. And maybe now
they make it easy to be hard.
Yeah. And
I don't know if we were that wrong.
Probably not. It's looking like we go back and we're pretty dead on.
We might be whistleblowers.
Yeah. But again, if we see less and less people utilizing the MLS, and now you have your larger big box brokerages with the agent count and the units going through it, do they create their own MLS systems? And now it becomes a fraction. We just fractioned off everything. Yeah. And now, Matt over here has a listing that it's only showing on a few websites. Yeah. And now we're not getting the exposure and eyeballs on it that we were before. Yeah. Right. We were hating on Zillow, and really the lawsuit this is kind of screwing everything up because I don't think Zillow's the enemy.
No,
right? Because Zillow,
they're definitely not making out better than anybody else with this.
No, I think Zillow might get kicked in the can in this whole thing.
I would love to have a Zillow exec on, or maybe the CEO of Zillow to understand. Like, most of their revenue comes from selling buyer leads. They don't own listings, right? They don't have any agents that are running listing and just putting up their own Zillow listings unless they still own some of their own properties. So they're renting our data, putting up our other agents' listings on their site, getting the traffic. So I saw someone post like, now Zillow's going to become a national broker. I was like, guys, they don't have the listings.
Yeah, they would need the one thing that brokers really need right now, and that's control of inventory.
Yes. So what we do know on this is, like, again, agents can offer compensation to other cooperative brokers as long as it's off the MLS.
I do want to go really quickly because I want to get through this entire list, and I don't know how we should do this. So just say the whole list and then dive in.
I think we just stay on until we're covered everything.
But Jared just made another good point. I appreciate you. Just like there's a lot of comments, and that's really great, right? Like, buyer reps will be enforceable, but will we enforce them? No. I want to just make a blanket statement here and frame this conversation. I don't mean to be grim. We have fewer than 6 available transaction sides per agent in the National Association of Realtors. I do predict that I think the industry will get cut in half in the next 5 years. It just will. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to be a jerk about that. I just think there are more licensed real estate agents than are necessary for the amount of market share that there is available.
Which is also pissing consumers off.
It is. And guys,
because bad agents are doing deals out there.
You have to understand, you got to ask yourself, why is the general public so against real estate agents on this whole thing? Well, we've sat here and done 219 other episodes where for the most part, we're in agreement. Most real estate agents aren't that great at their jobs, guys. I'm sorry. So I want to have a really reasonable adult conversation, but Jared, you are right. Most agents, they're not going to adapt to this. Nope. And unfortunately, that means they'll go and find another way to contribute and bring value in a different industry, and that is fine. But real estate as a whole is going to be a very viable industry going forward. You're just going to need to pivot and be great at what you do.
When I know, Matt, we've talked about this. We've said it on the show. 49% of all agents last year sold 1 house. And, the way that I look at this is our job as the real estate professional is to give guidance and, hopefully some expertise advice on what is happening in the market. We've said it on this show multiple times. It's never been our job as a buyer's agent to find the house, especially with the way technology has been. Right?
I've never thought that was my value proposition.
No, right? That is what we've always said. You're the glorified taxi cab driver of driving people around and opening doors and giving zero advice.
Yep.
And then you're right. You don't, in my opinion, you're right. You don't deserve that high paycheck.
Yeah.
That you should just get paid a flat fee and make a little bit of profit off your gas and time. And just supply the paperwork, because that's something you didn't provide any value there, right? And
Open Doors figured out getting the door open, that's not the value, right?
Right,
at all,
right. And so from
literally almost all of our most property management doors are self-showing now.
They are.
When you rent
houses, look, I think this
that's
only
not
works
just
for
our
certain
company.
things.
That's most companies. All I'm saying is, if that was the value you're providing, talk about an easy thing to automate.
One of the things I have seen in the comment section of Nick's video that went crazy viral. If you don't follow Nick on TikTok, you need to. He got like 600,000 views on his video. It's really good.
Definitely follow me.
And then yes, exactly. I don't even know if Brian has one. It's probably Brian the Force everywhere. But on mine too, one of the things that I've seen is that people are like, oh, well, we'll just show our own houses. We talked about this a while back. We actually had this conspiracy theory around Amazon when Amazon started trying to figure out if they could drop packages inside your door. And we summarily, as a society, were like, screw that, Amazon. You're not coming into our house. What in God's green earth makes you think that like Joe Seller is going to let Jeff Buyer come walk through his house when they're not home? And by the way, if you're the seller who's like, I'll just stay home, you're the worst. Every time anybody has ever walked through a house with a seller in there, they have had the worst showing experience of their life.
And that's the thing that I've seen, again, everyone that's the internet trolls, right? That you see.
They're out there.
They're like, you don't deserve this. You're a paper pusher. You're this. AI is going to replace you. We've heard every comment, right? And those are the ones who said, I've bought multiple houses without an agent. And when you go and probably look at it, did they get the best deal for themselves?
That's the crystal ball part of this that I wish existed. I don't want a time machine to go back and meet anybody or see dinosaurs. I want a time machine to go back and have somebody do their own for sale by owner, and then I'm going to sell it, and we're going to see who wins.
Well, and look, you might not be wrong. I think, and Jesse, if you can pull up that email again, there's so much to unpack here that I think, because listen, on a personal level, I very much agree with you. I also think that in a very quickly evolving industry, I don't want to predict the future of human behavior around how these transactions will happen. I agree, in this environment that we've been in for the last 3 to 5 decades, you're probably right. I want to focus more though on the actual changes themselves and the either merit or lack thereof of them, because I don't know how people will adapt. I will tell you that I don't want to be on here saying stuff that in 5 years from now I'm going to sound like an idiot, because I will tell you when digital trading took over most stock brokerage floors, I guarantee you the guys who used to wave paper around on the floor are like, the robots will never be able to do that. And now that's ridiculous. Almost all stock trades are, but all I'm saying is, like, I don't want to predict how people will react. I just want to predict whether or not this is good and which parts of it are good or bad. And how
let me ask you, because I've heard the stock trading analogy, and back then, were the stock traders giving you true advice on where stocks were going?
By the way, it's not a perfect analogy. I'm not standing by that.
Trust me, I've heard it so many times.
Yeah.
Right. Were they giving advice on where the market's going? Because I know a lot of people that go on an E-Trade and they go do their own stock, right? Yeah. They pay very minimal commission. And guess what? They're losing money.
Yeah. Well, they're probably losing money before, though, too, because I don't know if those guys were giving good advice.
Sure, yes.
So all I'm talking about is the logistics, meaning driving commissions to the floor because of automation.
Absolutely.
Whether or not you're giving good advice is totally subjective to your skill level.
You know what's crazy is, like, we all here's what, when it comes to buying and selling, right, and the automation part and everything else, is that, we want the price to be driven down all the way to next to nothing or free.
Yeah.
But we want a very high level service.
Still want the value.
We want the value in the service there, which is, to me, those don't go hand in hand.
No.
And Ryan Serhant was on, Jesse, was it on what was it? NBC, CNN, CNBC, one of the morning shows. And they were talking about, he was breaking this down, and he, first and foremost, he said, look, in New York City, we haven't had an MLS system. It's broken. It's fractured. And the morning,
not a uniform.
CNBC.
There's several. Like
sure,
there's exactly.
It's fractured. It's broken.
It's fractured. Exactly.
And so CNBC that he was on, and the host was like, "Yeah, I hate real estate in New York City because of how that is. That there's not. You were talking about transparency, which I think that this starts to fracture everything here.
Yeah.
And what did Serhant say? He said something about
also mostly a renter society, which is a totally different.
Yeah, it is.
I know. I don't.
That was the video that made me go viral on TikTok. Absolutely. I was like, I think
want to poke the bear. Then
no, the tinfoil. I mean, like, that was my tinfoil hat theory. This actually has a lot more to do with making all of us renters than it really does.
We're going to be here for a while, though. Let's dig into all that. So continue that thought.
So Jesse, what did Serhant say? He's like, look, in terms of value and price. Yep, you're ejecting from me here.
I don't know. Something I watched the video. Something in the form of transparency around.
Well, he talked about, like, value higher. You get a higher level of value and not at a cheaper rate or something like that.
Yes, and that's 100% true. By the way, I do want the real estate agents freaking out about this. I know that I just made a very grim statement earlier that half of you are going to be out of the business in the next 5 years. I'm sorry, I do stand by that. And those who are really bringing a lot of value, I don't want you to be afraid. This is a great opportunity to reimagine your business model and to get compensated the way that the market decides it should compensate you, which I understand for the most part was always true. But because we had certain regulations in place, there was a uniform standard that organically emerged, and that is kind of going away now. And you get the opportunity to reinvent your business. What I don't love about this is the swiftness, which with its being implemented, if it is implemented. It's not been ratified yet. I was talking to Nick yesterday about, like, the way they're implementing this is like the way we withdrew from Afghanistan.
That was like, a great comparison.
We all decided we didn't need to be in the Middle East anymore, but we didn't need to leave that second. Right? And then the Taliban takes over in 2 hours. Like, that's destabilization. We should have gotten a little bit more warning so the market could organically find the best business model moving forward. But if we're going to compare ourselves, which we self-righteously do, to doctors and lawyers and things like that, then we probably should be compensated as such. I guarantee you think your lawyer is overpaid, but when you get that DWI, you're going to pay whatever you need to get out of trouble because it is worth it,
or to minimize it, right?
Or to minimize it, right? But that's the value. There's a direct value there, and there is something to be said for the idea that the public is taking shots at the real estate industry right now. That's because not enough of us have brought value. And I know that can be fearful, but that can also be a massive opportunity if you are one of the few that brings tremendous value going forward.
Not only are they fearful, they're also they're getting mad about how fast things happen, right? Like a good job is also like angering to the general public. And we've said this for a long time. And actually, we kind of est on Kyle Draper, friend of the show, a little bit. about like, hey, agents, stop selling your successes so much. Talk about yourself more. This is where I kind of agree with him. We have done a bad job of helping people understand what's really entailed in our jobs. We've said, hey, sold in 2 days. And this is the most recent narrative, right? Because we're coming off of all the COVID market. Sold in 2 days, sold in 3 days, right? And it's like anything, what you focus on expands. So the people who are listening to that type of stuff, they're going to see more agents saying that. And I can tell you just from the experience the last couple of days on social media, people very much think the speed at which we do our job is actually makes us less valuable, right? And that's well, actually, it's crazy.
No, when we talk about value, this is actually perfect. So I want you to continue the thought.
No,
this is super relevant. So
pull
that up. So the answer to your question, Tyson, the question is, how much is that lawsuit lawyer making? The permanent answer, because you can Google it and it will be different every year or whatever. The permanent answer, Tyson, is whatever the market will pay him.
Yeah.
And that's what we are shifting to now. Plain and simple. Whatever the market will pay for the value that he brings. Straight up. I'm going to tell you, if you got in trouble and it was kind of just a minor thing and your lawyer tried to charge you
that's not what he's asking. How much is the lawsuit lawyer making?
25 to 35%. Class action lawsuit lawyers are taking home 25 to 35%. Yeah.
Well, again, still whatever the market will command.
Yeah.
Those guys don't have a set amount. It's the same premise.
Well, it's from a class action. I believe it's 50. I've heard upwards of more than $50 million.
25 to 35%.
If they charge too much, then people wouldn't file class action lawsuits.
Even if the only settlement was a NAR settlement, which by the way, it's not, because individual brokerages had settled before this to kind of get out of that. So I don't even know what the total amount is.
They're making probably more than you would be comfortable with. And if they took too much, people wouldn't go through the trouble of filing class action lawsuits.
Look, you can go out and look, and there's websites where you can Google this.
It's a lot of money.
It's 82. There's guesstimations that it's $82 million. And I will tell you, that's from March 8th, which was before this $418 million came in.
It's a lot of money.
They're getting a percentage of that one too.
Yep. It is a lot of money. And
it's crazy to me that we love attorneys. It's not
regulated. It's a free market.
The consumers love attorneys, also real estate agents. Understand right now, they think the attorneys are going to solve all of their problems in this.
Attorneys are just going to take these contracts. I'm sorry to even take that comment.
By the way,
I'm trying to do this in order, but
it's not that free market on the attorney side. You were saying it as it's not. There's certain class action lawsuits. They all look around the same stuff. So
all I'm saying is that the people filing the lawsuit are doing it for personal gain.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
And so if the gain wasn't enough for them,
correct,
they wouldn't take that action.
Yes. But it's an
oligopoly.
There's not Brian Jeffrey over here.
Jesse, Google oligopoly,
what you're saying
please.
Is there's not a broad enough market to bring pricing down.
Correct.
It is a free market. It's just a very private market.
Can we file a class action lawsuit against the class action lawyers that we need to have more transparency around
snacks on snacks, baby,
bring their cost down? Because there is Harvey now. Harvey is the AI lawyer out there. This is an AI software named Harvey that does all their work for them, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
their price better come down.
I would say, Jared, just to your comment, no, NAR's doing nothing for us anymore.
No,
there's a few episodes ago where we talk about the changes there. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You ever have that moment in a toxic relationship where you're like, this is probably the moment.
This is the end, but we own a house together, so I can't leave.
Exactly. So, all right, let's go back to it. We said brokers can publish offers of compensation, but it has to be through their own listings or on their own website. So they can do that. Yeah.
Does it though? Because let me ask you a question about this. Because let's just be stupid transparent. There's already emails circulating in the real estate world of how to list these things in remarks and language around it. Like, what are we talking about though?
Okay.
I think
there was a comment above.
I think here we go. So let's try to be objective here about one, Jared. I do understand now. Yes, they probably will try to raise our fees, which is ridiculous. That's why we're running. We're running for quad CEOs of NAR.
That's right.
We will not raise your fees and free lunches and free car washes. So to go,
it'll be epic.
Jeez, where did we just leave off on that? God, you guys are driving me crazy in a good way. Where did we just leave off? Now I lost my train of thought. On the websites.
Yes.
So let's talk objectively. I wanted to keep this conversation around what do we think is good and bad about this, right? Unfortunately, what this also does is it fractures the flow of data.
Right.
So if I can only advertise a very integral part of the financial part of the transaction, which would be the compensation method, I can't advertise on that on the MLS, but I can advertise that on my own website. I am withholding from most of the public domain a very key piece of the transaction from the financial perspective, which would be the buyer's agent commission that I'm offering. But I can offer that on my own private data feed, which means that the more inventory I control, the more power I have over the market. That's actually not a good thing.
Or
I don't think.
Or can you put in the remarks, right? Because agents are going to go on the MLS. Can you put in the remarks? All right,
yes.
Go to nickgood.com and in there.
Yes,
right?
you can. So,
like,
yes. Okay. So yes, there are always workarounds.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, I want to talk about whether or not this is good or bad for the industry. I think that part is bad.
Look,
yes, there are workarounds, but I just want to talk about the fundamental premise of this settlement. Is it good or bad for real estate going forward? I think that aspect is overrated.
I actually want to say, like, I think it's good for real estate going forward, because here's what I like about the settlement. It enforces transparency, because what I hate.
Every part of it. What I mean is that particular part that I'm not allowed to advertise a buyer's agent commission if I want to.
Well, but I can even argue,
and I can't put it.
I could even argue that that's a little bit good in the sense of what we're talking about is the lowest common denominator. And I personally want to say to all of you who did this, eat shit, because the real estate agents who did this and were steering agents. I took the steering part of my real estate classes very seriously.
Yes.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
Like, I took those part of the classes very seriously. I have never, not once, based whether or not I show a house based off commission, to the point where I couldn't tell you. I'm usually finding out the commission as I'm writing the offer.
I would challenge,
and I'm putting it in the contract.
I agree. And there's one part that I would. So Jared just made Jared's like the fifth host of the show now. The comment was, right, like, the reason it's not allowed is because we can't just tell our sellers then that everybody else is doing it. Well, in the commercial world,
nobody was ever doing that.
Listen, in the commercial world, you can put in the description what your buyer's commission is. If I'm not mistaken, you can put whatever you want in the description of the commercial world on LoopNet or whatever. I don't think there's a regulation around that. And still, the market decides whether or not you offer a buyer's commission. I mean, most of our multifamily transactions, we don't offer a buyer's.
You pay for your own.
You pay for your own,
right.
And so I actually don't buy that. I don't buy that if you had the ability to do it, it would just become a market norm. I don't like the idea that you were forced to offer a buyer's commission. I also don't like the idea that you're not allowed to in the MLS if you choose to. And you have to find this weird workaround through closing costs.
Here's my thought. That's
not a true free market.
Look, I thought, number one, I don't believe that the way the settlement, if it ratifies the way we see it now, is good for the overall consumers, right? And everyone talks about transparency, and for the most part, I don't, unless someone was hiding fees somewhere else. Yeah. To me, it's pretty transparent.
In Texas, a listing agreement very clearly states this.
That's a better way to do it. Negotiable option.
It states it in pretty much everybody's listing agreement, right? And we've always
you'd have to tell me the state where you don't have to disclose what the BAC is.
Here's I agree. So that's why I said I'm here to learn. It sounded like you maybe didn't agree with, like, I don't think you should force people to not be able to do it.
I agree with I agree with all of the economics of it. The part of this where I think the consumer is bent out of shape that I agree with was agents were out there implying that it was required, right? Okay. Because I do think the way the system is set up, a BAC is a marketing tool, right? So
it was required. You had to have something in there.
You had to have something in there. But we know an agent who put $1 in there, right?
I agree,
it's always been negotiable.
I do agree that the fundamental premise, though, was flawed. You shouldn't be forced to offer that.
You're right. But I think where that screws people, though, is where you have a buyer. Now, the new scenario to me seems that a buyer has to decide on what they're trying to do is keep agents from not showing or writing offers on home based on commission. So what they've done is now buyers have to make a decision based on whether or not they're going to offer on the home before they know what it's going to cost them. Because if it's 0 and they've agreed to pay their agent 3%, that home is now 3% more expensive, and that would dictate their offer price and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah. They've now squeezed the buyer into this tiny little corner of the room where the buyer has to make a decision without all of the information that does affect the end price in an attempt to tell buyers agents that they were wrong. And that didn't work.
So I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should, if you choose to offer it, you should be able to advertise it.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't see why that is a violation of a free market.
Because unscrupulous buyers agents were using that to their advantage. And I also
when
don't
it was
know how that
forced and regulated, I guess. But if you choose to, I don't have to offer a buyer's agent commission anymore. But it is material to the transaction. Yeah. So I should be able to advertise.
By the way, we never were forced to offer. We were forced to offer something, but let's be real. Let's be real here.
It's like you're forced to put him out in the option.
Sure, I could look the way that it has always been, at least in our state and state of Texas, is that I am charging a fee, a commission. I am electing out of the commission that I'm charging to then share X. But
it had to be at least $1 or something.
Sure. Okay.
I don't want to get into like a big deep rabbit hole about amounts. I agree with you that you could have done a million different things. I know that we've all offered different levels of buyer agent commission in the past. All of us here. I have not always offered 3% buyer commission. I've
actually not always taken. I've taken less than the buyer's agent's gotten before.
All I'm saying is I believe in the purity of free markets, and up until now, you did have to offer something. But now you don't. But you're also not allowed to if you choose to.
But here's where I'm going to disagree with everyone on this. Is like who was being forced to offer a comp?
Every agent that put their home in the MLS.
So the agent was forced. So the agent, the agent was the one being forced, not the seller. But they were not the ones being forced.
I agree.
They decided to hire an agent. That agent charged a fee. Right from there, that agent, who is a business owner, has to, because they were bound by the mafia rules.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, good.
I'm saying
about time, Brian.
Jesus, no, that's what I've been saying.
No, I do think that's a unique view.
I like the fact that agents are no longer forced to offer part of their compensation. I don't like the fact that they can't advertise it in the MLS if they choose to.
Right. One
deregulates the market, and it says you're not forced to do this anymore. The other says you can't do this if you want to, and I don't agree with that part.
Yeah,
that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. The biggest stickler in all this is that look, in the brokerage world, they needed to also make money. The agents needed to make money.
Yeah,
and we had. Even though we call it, and I couldn't argue with this person, like when we say there's not a standard fee, there is when you start to have an average, does that become the standard?
So this is why I actually like this part of the thing, is because when we had forced compensation, that's actually how you develop a standard. If everybody has to pay a buyer's agent, over time, there becomes a normal buyer's agent commission. This isn't theoretical. Buyer's agency didn't even come into play until the early 90s. And so we have 30-something years of data on this, and how when you force cooperation, eventually a certain norm emerges. And so that was the regulated part. And that's why I agree with you. We say that it wasn't regulated, that you had to offer you didn't have to offer half.
Yeah.
Right. But really, because you had to offer something and everybody else was offering something, it all kind of evened out in the wash, and everybody kind of offered the same thing.
Yes.
Now you don't have to do that anymore. You can offer whatever you want. And I don't like the idea that you can't advertise what you're offering, because I think it's material to the transaction. But this is how the commercial world works. You don't get a standard buyer's agency commission in the commercial world. So I very much respectfully disagree with anybody in the comments that's like, saying that this will all, buyer's agency commission, it'll become very shadowy and all. Like, we will have to get paid for our value. Buyer's agents who are valuable will not get left out in the dust. We're really just transitioning to more of a cycle that works more like the commercial world. I just also know in the commercial world, you can tell people that you're paying a buyer's commission publicly on here. All right. But there's also also to play devil's advocate in my own argument. There's no commercial MLS necessarily.
Well, so that's
why like LoseNet and
So here's what I was about to break down. I was like, the problem is everyone talks about commercial. Brian and I do a lot in that world, and it's broken. That's a broken world. They need to have a better MLS system.
It's not necessarily any better.
It's not. It's actually worse for the consumer, which I am selling right now, some of my stuff, and it's worse for the consumer because you have to trust that the broker you hired has the right database. But I want to go
It's actually all the problems we're talking about.
I want to go to what Kevin Moran posted, because so Kevin said some brokerages required a mandatory 3% BAC when taking a listing. Here's the thing. Who cares? That is you, Kevin, if that was the brokerage you were part of, which it probably was, you made a choice as an agent to go to that brokerage.
Yep.
There is plenty of other brokerages around that don't mandate that. And so to me, the way I look at this is that as agents, we're saying, oh, but it was mandated by XYZ. You chose to be at that brokerage. No one put a gun to your head to say, Brian, you need to be at KW. Matt, you need to be at AXP.
I think Brian's going to say the same thing I'm going to say.
No, I don't. So I'll say it first. So you can agree. I don't disagree with you theoretically. I do think, again, in a forced cooperation environment, those just become the things you don't think about because everybody pays pretty much the same thing.
Sure.
So it doesn't seem like a meaningful thing when you're choosing a brokerage.
Maybe not, but at the same time, as a if we believe in the freedom of business, you are joining a business that has elected to say this is what we're offering comp wise. Okay, and you elected to go into that business.
You're not wrong. Okay, so here, let's put this part of it to bed, right? Are we in agreement that free markets are usually better for people who provide real value?
That's definitely what sellers want.
I would like it if you still could advertise the BAC if you chose to.
Even if it's zero.
Even if it's zero, put zero. I'm
just
fine
tell
with
them
that.
what they're up against up front.
Because I think it's material to the transaction, right? I want to get to this part of it. So a gentleman just put a comment that I gotta just get this out. Real estate agents are doing a disservice by just preaching this right now. So the comment was, you can put it up. Commercial is different than residential. What about 90% of buyers who don't have the extra money for a buyer's commission?
You've been waiting for this one. You have been waiting for this one.
I want to hear you about this because I actually have some sympathy for this situation. I don't think you guys do.
It's not that I don't have sympathy.
I don't think you guys do.
It's not that I don't have sympathy. It's just the wrong solution for the wrong problem. Okay, so let's talk about the hot button topic of first-time home buyers. Many agents are on social media right now saying first-time home buyers are going to get crushed by this. They'll never be able to buy a home, right? Guys, stop saying that. It's fundamentally untrue. What is true is that potentially the average age of a first-time home buyer might increase because the situation becomes, if I have to compensate my own buyer's agent, I need more money, right? So if I was 25 and was scraping by for a down payment for my first home, and now that down payment increases by whatever commission I agreed to pay my agent, I may not have that money. So I may not have to rent for another certain period of time, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, whatever, until I can afford, with the money I have set aside, to compensate my buyer's agent. The idea that first-time home buyers are going to get crushed is the idea that people will no longer be able to afford homes ever. The average age by which somebody might be able to afford a home might increase. And I'm not saying that's bad or good or anything. I'm just saying first-time home buyers won't get crushed. The demographic of first-time home buyers might change. That's the truth. If a wedding cost $20,000 and then it increased to $85,000, people would wait till they were older to get married.
There's a point of diminishing returns on that, though. You can become too old for it to no longer be super beneficial, just like marriage, right?
Potentially. I'm just saying we don't make enough money that's probably
no, and I'm not saying that's the case, but I mean, like, also just like acting like the age demographic of a wealth building endeavor doesn't matter. I will say this all day long. I am the oldest person in the room right now, and you guys are way wealthier than I am, right? Because the age at which you decided to start doing wealth building activities was much smarter and more informed than mine was.
You're not wrong. Okay, so I'm not saying there's not a point in diminishing returns. And I'm not even saying this is a good thing or a bad thing or anything. I'm just merely remarking that the idea that first-time home buyers will no longer be able to afford homes is fundamentally erroneous. They'll just be older when they do. So we got to get that part straight. Yeah. Just because that's I want us to be educated when we're having these conversations with other human beings.
All right, so then do we see less transaction volume happening?
I don't see why you would start later in life potentially. And so maybe by one cycle, maybe the lifetime value of a client isn't 12, maybe it's 11. And that is material. Yep. The other part of this, though, is that's the wrong solution to the wrong problem. So I'm going to give you guys a theoretical or an analogy here. And please understand, this is a theoretical analogy. This has nothing to do with the last 12 years of politics in this country. I'm not making a political commentary. I think this is a good apples to apples comparison. Let's talk about voter ID laws for a second. You guys want to get more viewers on the show?
We're losing them.
We're getting more.
Listen. So there's a debate sometimes between the left and the right around voter ID laws, right? And one is a theoretical. If we want to have fair elections, we should be able to see, hey, like Jeff already voted, right? That seems to make meaningful sense, right? And the other side would say the corruption around this is that a certain demographic has a little bit harder time getting access to identification is kind of the argument, right? And the solution there is not that we shouldn't have voter ID laws, is that we should make it easier for people to have access to basic things like identification. In the same way, if first-time homebuyers were going to get crushed, the solution is not to pay their buyer's agent commission for them. It's that we have a fundamental unaffordability problem in the American housing market that we need to solve. That's not the solution, is to pay their buyer's agent commission for them.
No,
we have a
not.
much larger problem that we would need to solve.
But that flies right in the face of your capitalistic integrity around the houses should be able to be worth as much as they're worth.
Well, I think that there's a massive amount of corruption.
There probably is, but we ain't walking that back.
So that's like maybe a whole different podcast.
Probably.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that if your viewpoint is like first-time homebuyers are going to get crushed and we should pay the buyer's agent commission because that saves them, you're providing the wrong solution to a bigger problem.
I'll meet you in the middle.
Okay.
I do not think that the seller is responsible for the buyer's agent commission in the sense that they've never have been and they shouldn't be going forward.
Okay.
I do think there are going to have to be creative ways for buyers to finance this, for sellers to concession this, for all types of things, because there is a small amount, there is a large contingent of first-time home buyers who have a small amount of money. And what we do have to do is we have to find a solution somewhere for that.
But the solution is there. We have down payment assistance programs. It's
Absolutely.
You'd start building, and there's going to be
everybody start hearing from lenders.
Yeah,
loud
commissions will be built into this. I mean, back before the Dodd-Frank Act, I remember you used to be able to build in. You could go to 110% of market value, right? Like you could overfinance.
Bananas.
Like, and so do we start to see some of that where they loosen up and now we start to say, is real estate as well as a wealth determiner or builder for the average consumer in American? Is tinfoil hat?
Yeah.
Is that the government trying to kind of screw all this and say, hey, real estate isn't the place where you're going to build your wealth, and you should rent. That's a whole different.
How do you
conspiracy.
deconstruct something like that? Because I actually had somebody toss this crazy comment out on TikTok that home ownership was never designed to be a wealth determiner, right? That was never the intention. And so I actually went to Google because I was like, damn, dude, there's a whole bunch of stuff I don't know. Let me go learn about this, right? And the Homestead Act that Abraham Lincoln enacted allowed people to start buying homes, whatever. But like literally since the beginning of the 20th century, which is the 1900s, real estate ownership has been a wealth determiner. So if people want to deconstruct the last 125 years of stuff we've been doing, then great. But like, I just want to walk it back to like 10 years ago. I'm not trying to go back 12 decades.
Look, it's been a wealth determiner. It's been a builder. It's the average Americans, their net worth comes from the majority of the equity in their home. And like Danny said, like Danny Force put up here. This is an
important one.
So I said this with Chauncey Pham yesterday. So number one, Danny says this could just lead to legal steering. Buyers only wanting to see homes where they're not paying a fee and can have their agents legally steer them towards only those homes. And I also told on a note, I said, do we now, because we've had discriminatory problems. We brought this up. And are we now going to see more discriminatory cases come up where people feel that they're being discriminated against because no one's going to help
So
them?
I'm not going to say this, that I'm going to say this to my clients, but what if a real estate agent said this? What if I'm having a buyer consultation, right? Because in my listing consultations, I talk about this with my clients. Hey, is there a price of an offer where you want to hear about it? You don't want to hear about it, right? Like whatever. What if now we're just talking to our buyers of, hey, if we find out that this is offering less than X%, because that's what you agree to pay me, do you even want me to show it to you? Well, oh, no, Mr. Buyer, you've made a decision about the home you're going to buy and you don't want me to even show it to you? Cool, I won't. That's the legal it's absurd that people don't think we can't ask this question and then have all the wiggle room we need because our client told us not to show it.
That's a variation on the point I was going to make. I disagree with the steering thing because I just don't. Jared, again, is kind of alluding to what I'm talking about. So steering laws are designed so that we don't purposely steer people away from other demographics based on discriminatory practices, right? If I'm choosing not to pursue living in a certain area or making an offer on a certain house because of the financial implication, that's just as impactful as sales price to me. So that's not really steering from the sense in the spirit of what steering is supposed to be, if that makes sense. If I don't want to pay a certain whatever and they're not offering a BAC, so I go, okay, that financial investment doesn't make sense to me. That's not really steering. And so if I tell my agent, hey, I don't want to look at any houses that aren't offering you a BAC.
Yes.
I don't see how that's necessary.
Now,
that's not really in the spirit of steering.
If you're a smart agent, get that very clearly in email. Like this is how you protect yourself. Very honestly, like you want to protect yourself as an agent, just have your client tell you, hey, I want you to check on commissions before we offer on any of these homes. I like you. I think you are valuable. I have agreed to pay you X.
Right.
If it's more than X, I need to understand that before I can make an offer.
Yeah, which again is why I think you should be able to offer that on the MLS if you choose to. It makes way more transparency.
This doesn't help.
But steering is reserved for the idea of demographic steering, not necessarily financial steering.
Not when lawyers get involved.
Yeah, I mean, look at Colby just put one major thing that this is going to open.
But that's just
is
fucking blood in the water and people trying to take advantage.
Yeah, so one thing that this is going to do is open the door for more lawsuits. I don't see how it doesn't, except this time it's going to be from the buyers, right? So like, again,
Colby, if you just follow our page, you won't show up as anonymous. I don't know why you have to quote yourself on these stupid comments.
But that's how Colby talks.
I'm Colby Meal.
I
think this is a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, Corey shows up. Colby doesn't.
No, I know.
Yeah. All right. So agents must make commission disclosures. And Jesse, have we hit all the 5 on that?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, we did?
Let's actually, I want to go back to that comment that the Michael Brownstead, because this is, go back up in the comments. Michael Brownstead put in here, let's not forget about our VA buyers.
Did a video about this today.
This will be a tough one to navigate since they can't pay a broker commission. And Michael, you probably, maybe you weren't at the beginning of the show. I said, as agents, we're going to have to kind of forget about what is current and what is the past.
Markets adapt.
And what's going to happen in the future. And so I've heard within the VA community that they are looking at adapting these rules, that they're going to have, like, you're not going to want to discriminate against a VA home loan.
We have heard that the VA doesn't get together to discuss stuff often, and they are absolutely talking about how to solve this
problem. The VA makes money when they make home loans.
Yes.
Okay. They want to continue to. They will adapt. I understand that's frustrating, and it feels like that's a takeaway, but markets adapt. If there's money to be made, they'll find a way to make it work.
Correct. Yeah. So, agents must, we already said this, number 5, agents must make commissions disclosures. Agent must disclose in a listing agreement and buyer's representation agreement and pre-closing disclosures that broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. And NAR must require that the realtor boards and MLSs to include these documents in any form agreements that they published.
Yep.
I mean,
there's going to be paperwork around this.
Yeah.
Well,
pay attention to your broker.
That's a good,
right?
But you can put Franzetti's comment.
Yeah, I was just checking that out too.
But I don't. Am I
read it off?
I don't
real quick.
think. So protecting yourself with a legal document works. Question mark. Right. The legal listing agreements that were signed by all the sellers in the lawsuits didn't seem to protect the listing agents or brokers. But for what I understand, I mean, they protected the listing agents. I don't know any listing agents that got sued.
Yeah, this is sellers essentially.
That's not true.
Is that not true?
So in Texas,
because a bunch of teams
they were starting to get lawsuits against teams and agents, and so
it's actually a really good point because NAR settled, but we were just following their rules.
Correct.
So Franzetti makes a good point there that some agents and brokers got sued for just following a policy that they didn't want to implement themselves.
Correct. And so
that's bullshit.
Well, we've talked about it. All of us at one point have been in the same place. And like, we've talked about that forced percentage, right? Yeah. Or what we perceive to be the forced percentage. Then ultimately when pushed back against, there was wiggle room too, right? So it's like, I understand how the consumers feel like they got jammed up on this. Right, I absolutely do.
I agree. Well, like going forward, I mean, like to be clear, you're not wrong. We didn't draft these documents. We're not in trouble.
Somebody on my TikTok says I'm going to jail.
Oh gosh.
Like he is straight up telling me I better get ready for the pokey.
We're not in trouble.
Yeah.
We're not.
No.
We just have to change our business model. Adam does make a good point though that some broker. I mean, how many brokers settled in this whole debacle?
I mean, I know there
quite
was
a few.
Yes.
But they were just following the guidelines set forth by NAR.
Well, they settled because 91% of all lawsuits.
Yes,
settle, right?
and like this is one of those weird things that we get to do as humans, where we get to see a stat that says, "Hey, this is just what always happens," but then we get to act like somebody did something wrong because this is what's happening on social media. Everybody's like, "Hey, your people settled; they were admitting guilt," and it's like,
no, they just weren't fighting.
No, it's because
anymore.
It's cheaper to just settle and just deal with the repercussions of settling, because we also know in 5 minutes
legal system
like that's like everybody's like, oh, you settled, you're guilty, and I'm like, no, that's not I didn't do anything. First off, you dorks.
Yeah, you know who didn't settle? It's Theron Smith over at Armadillo. He's not going to settle on any home warranties for you. So armadillo.1/TOR TORE. And so, yeah, there you can see it at the bottom of the screen if you're watching this. Right down at the bottom, just armadillo.1/TORE, and he won't settle on giving you a home warranty, and then he'll just settle and get rid of it for you. Like, he won't do that.
No,
he's got that hard shell protection. In fact, if NAR had hired Armadillo as a warranty company, they probably would have had this all.
It's getting personal.
Yeah. All right, like, I don't know how much more we can really dive on
I
that.
could just go in the comments all day. You know, I hate that we got to wrap this up.
I actually am going to go back to them. I think these comments are going to spark future shows
really
too,
good,
because this is
like just to try. So, like, Franz, I made another one. Like, how certain are we that buyer's reps will still be enforceable? And I think one of the reasons they maybe weren't is because of forced regulation. I would hope that in a free market, the buyer rep that you sign is enforceable the same way that a lawyer's fee is enforceable.
Yeah,
I would hope.
I hope it's enforceable the same way that ACH I signed for some dumbass thing for $5 is enforceable, and I can't figure out a way to stop being charged $4.99 by Marvel Games.
Yeah.
I hope it's that enforceable.
Yeah. Look, I will tell you that, kind of trying to unbundle this, just like cable, I feel like I spend more now than I did when I had cable television.
Oh my gosh.
Dude.
And so, like, the way that I just look at all of this is that I personally don't believe this is actually the best thing for consumers.
No.
And really, we've talked about this before, since 1992, as far back as we could see, at least through the Googles, is that the average commission rate has been right around 6%. It's been about 5 points.
I agree with you guys in the sense that we didn't really have a problem before.
No.
I do agree with parts of this as far as regulating markets, but then there's also more regulation put in place in some areas. So it's kind of
it's a crapshoot, and
it's Egg McMuffins or sausage biscuits. It's the same difference. It's all from McDonald's, dude. Like,
which one's better?
I like the biscuits,
McMuffins.
dude. The muffins are too flaky.
McMuffins.
I like the McMuffins.
Yeah.
I don't like the biscuits. I like the English muffin stuff.
Yeah, I hear you.
I like the flaky
Hey,
biscuits.
on this one, guys, go support our sponsors, because this is something that they help us put this together. It's Mortgage Mike, mmgloans.com. If you want that Mortgage Mike stamp of approval, he's given the best rates out there.
I heard he'll go show your houses for you.
That's what I heard. He'll go show houses for you, and he will never settle. So mmgloans.com. And then you've already seen Theron up in these comments. Theron Smith with Armadillo Home Warranty, giving you that hard shell protection on your client's house. Armadillo.1/TOR, TORE. And then property management. You need it right now.
Yes, you do.
Because, look, if you're not offering a commission,
You're going to be renting,
then
baby.
your house ain't selling, and you're going to want to put it up for lease, and you need to get with Dana Wynn over at Homeward Resident Property Management Company. Are you looking at me like I'm crazy over here?
I want to say silly stuff.
Yeah, I get it. So just go to homewardfw.com. And then, look, guys, Tor Studios, this is where we shoot this thing. Jesse makes us look really, really good, and that's hard to do for him because he's got a lot to work with over here. But we're launching a new product called Tor Webinars, and you'll see here coming up, we're gonna do an actual webinar breaking down again this just in slide format, and then show you how if you go over to torstudios.com and sign up, or just message Jesse, get on that list, because what you're going to want to do is really get your marketing in order. You're going to want to really build up the value that you are, because we know that, look, 99% of you are really valuable agents. That other 1%, they can go. But we know that you got a lot of value to bring to your clientele, but you need to show it off. It's time to up your sales skills. And you can do that through Tor Webinars. And so that will be launched here in the next
Couple weeks.
less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Less than 2 weeks. And so just get ready for that. Sign up for our free webinar that we'll be hosting, kind of breaking this down just in a webinar format so you can see how great it's going to be for you. But go to torstudio.com and then I think we need some reviews.
We do need reviews.
Yeah. Review us, please.
Yeah. Somewhere.
On iTunes.
iTunes and then
Apple
Spotify.
Podcasts.
Apple,
We're so old.
Apple
People hate us
Podcasts.
for Spotify.
Yeah,
iTunes.
it's just called Podcasts on Apple.
It's not even called Apple Podcasts.
It just says Podcasts.
Podcast is like the P. Diddy of podcasts. It
Yes.
used to be Puff Daddy. Now it was P. Diddy. Now it's just Diddy.
Yeah.
It's eventually going to be a symbol like Prince.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't agree with Nick. I only think 20% of you are valuable.
Oof. Go to
Everybody
his
else figured it
just
out.
go to our TikToks. Brian doesn't have one. Just go to ours. Mine is Nick.
Nick and I are killing it on TikTok right now.
Yeah,
We're the voice of the real estate agents.
at home. I'm over telling Addie, I'm like, look, I done surpassed you on views.
I'm gonna talk it up.
All of Addie's friends when we were at the beach last week for spring break, and they're like, oh, just Nick Good Realtor, just Nick Good Realtor.
Nick Good Realtor.
That's how all our friends know me now. Like we've got Mortgage Mike.
Yeah.
All of my the dad's group I'm a part of, they all know DeBacker's Mortgage Mike. That's the old they call him.
Yeah.
And now with Addie's friend group, I'm Nick Good Realtor.
See, that's branding right there.
Yeah,
all
doing
you
something
need.
right. So
Whatever.
Yeah. What else have you got for us, Brian?
Let's
Do you want to talk more?
About the Vietnam War?
Fair Voting Act and
Oh,
everything else.
I was going to talk about Bruce Lee not having real fights.
Nope.
And you know what? It's also
Thanks for watching the show today. Make sure if you're watching this on Facebook, you head over to our group, the only real estate group we're being a part of, so you can watch the extended conversation. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you listen on the Apple Podcast, leave us a review. We'd really like it. So just do it. Do it. Do that over there. Go to this one. And then go to that one. Thanks.